The twin suns of New Haven painted the morning sky in shades of gold and crimson. Commander Lee Minho sipped his coffee on the observation deck, watching the daily miracle that never got old. Below in the colony's central plaza, dozens of children ran and played, their laughter echoing off the crystalline buildings that humanity had carved from this alien world. His 8-year-old daughter, Nari, was easy to spot among the crowd. Her bright yellow jacket made her stand out as she chased her best friend Kim Ji-woo around the fountain. The sight made Minho smile. After 15 years of military service across 3 different star systems, moments like these reminded him why humanity had ventured so far from Earth. The defense station's early warning systems hummed quietly in the background. For 2 years, New Haven had been peaceful. The nearest hostile species was 3 jump gates away, and they had signed non-aggression treaties with all neighboring civilizations. Minho had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this corner of the galaxy could remain untouched by war. That illusion shattered in 3 seconds. The first alarm was barely a whisper. Minho's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips as his trained ears caught the subtle change in the station's harmonics. Something was wrong with the orbital sensors. The second alarm screamed across the colony like a banshee's wail. "Sir!" Lieutenant Park Seo-jun burst through the observation deck doors, his face pale as moonlight. "We have incoming contacts. Multiple. Ships, unknown configuration." Minho spun toward the tactical display just as the third alarm joined the chorus. The holographic screen showed New Haven's peaceful morning transformed into something from a nightmare. 12 massive vessels had appeared from nowhere, dropping out of hyperspace so close to the planet that their energy signatures made the air itself crackle. "How did they get past our early warning grid?" Minho demanded, his military instincts taking over. "Sir, they didn't trigger any of our sensors. It's like they just materialized inside our defensive perimeter." The ships were unlike anything in human databases. Sleek and organic, they looked more grown than built. Their obsidian hulls seemed to absorb light, making them appear like tears in reality itself. Each vessel was roughly the size of a human destroyer, but their design suggested something far more advanced. Below in the plaza, the children had stopped playing. Even from this height, Minho could see them pointing at the sky where the alien ships hung like dark omens against the morning light. "Get me a communication link to all ships," Minho ordered. "Standard first contact protocols." "Sir, they're moving. To intercept positions around the colony. Attack formation." Minho's blood turned to ice. These weren't explorers or traders. The formation was textbook orbital assault positioning. He grabbed the emergency communicator from his belt. "All families, implement lockdown procedures immediately. This is not a drill. Get your children to the safe zones now." But even as he spoke, smaller craft began detaching from the main ships. Dozens of sleek transport pods descended like metallic rain, their purpose unmistakably clear. The first pod landed in the center of the plaza with a sound like thunder. The children scattered, but they had nowhere to run. More pods slammed into the ground around the colony's residential sectors, their impact craters smoking in the morning air. From each pod emerged creatures that would haunt human nightmares for generations to come. The Vextai stood nearly 8 feet tall, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming like black armor. 6 arms ended in razor-sharp claws, while their elongated heads housed compound eyes that missed nothing. Most terrifying of all were their mandibles, designed for tearing flesh from bone. But these aliens moved with surgical precision, not mindless hunger. They had come here with a specific purpose. "They're targeting the children," Seo-jun whispered. In horror, Minho watched helplessly as the alien soldiers surrounded groups of terrified youngsters. Their movements were coordinated, efficient, almost clinical. This wasn't random violence or primitive aggression. This was a calculated operation. His daughter Nari had taken shelter behind the fountain with 5 other children. A Vextai warrior approached them slowly, its compound eyes fixed on the cowering humans. Minho's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm, but they were too far away. The defense station's weapons couldn't fire into the colony without risking human casualties. The alien reached out with one clawed appendage and gently, almost carefully, lifted Nari from her hiding spot. She didn't scream. Instead, she looked directly up at the observation deck, somehow finding her father's face across the impossible distance. Her lips formed a single word: Daddy. Then the communication arrays across the colony crackled to life with a voice that sounded like grinding metal and hissing steam. Humans of this pathetic colony, the aliens' words clicked and rasped through every speaker in New Haven. I am Hive Master Thek of the Vextai Collective. We have taken 43 of your spawn as specimens for our brood chambers. The transport pods began lifting off, each one carrying precious human cargo. Minho could see children's faces pressed against the transparent sections of the alien craft, their eyes wide with terror but still defiant. Even in their fear, they maintained that uniquely human spark that refused to be extinguished. You have 3 rotations to surrender all military assets and submit to collective authority, Hive Master Thek continued. Failure to comply will result in your offspring being processed as nourishment for our young. They will scream beautifully as our larvae consume them from within. The alien ships began ascending toward orbit, carrying their human cargo toward an unthinkable fate. In the plaza below, parents ran screaming toward the empty impact craters where their children had vanished. The sound of their anguish echoed off the colony's walls like the cries of wounded animals. Minho stood frozen on the observation deck, watching the alien fleet disappear into hyperspace. In the span of 10 minutes, his world had been transformed from paradise to purgatory. The Vextai had struck with the precision of a surgical blade, cutting out the heart of human civilization on New Haven. But as he stared at the empty sky where his daughter had vanished, Minho felt something cold and hard crystallizing in his chest. The aliens had made a fundamental error in their calculations. They had studied human military tactics, human technology, human weaknesses, but they had failed to understand the most dangerous force in the known galaxy. They had awakened the protective fury of human parents. And that was a mistake that entire civilizations had learned to regret. The emergency klaxon aboard the battlecruiser, Retribution, shattered Admiral Park Jisu's morning routine like a hammer through glass. She was in her private quarters, reviewing supply reports over breakfast, when the priority alert reached her personal communicator. The device hadn't made that particular sound in over 3 years. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling up the incoming transmission. Commander? Lee Minho's face appeared on her personal screen, and Jisoo knew immediately that something terrible had happened. She had served with Minho during the Centauri campaigns. She had never seen him look broken before. Admiral, Minho's voice cracked as he spoke. New Haven is under attack. They took the children, all of them. The words hit Jisoo like a physical blow. Her coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the deck plating. Among the colonists on New Haven was her sister's family. Her nephew Kim Tae-hyung, barely 6 years old, who sent her drawings of spaceships every month. How many? She asked, her voice steady despite the storm building inside her chest. 43 children, ages 4 to 15. The aliens called themselves the Vextai. They want us to surrender our entire fleet or they'll... Minho couldn't finish the sentence. Jisoo closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. When she opened them again, the woman who had earned her rank through 2 decades of military service was gone. In her place stood something far more dangerous, a human being whose family had been threatened. Send me everything, she ordered. Tactical data, ship configurations, communication records, everything. Within minutes, the Retribution's command center buzzed with activity. Captain Han Jiho stood at the central tactical display, his usually calm demeanor cracked like old armor. Jisoo had handpicked Jiho for his ability to remain cool under pressure, but today his jaw was clenched tight enough to shatter teeth. Ma'am, Jiho reported as Jisoo entered the bridge, we've analyzed the attack footage. 12 Vextai vessels, configuration unknown. They use some kind of stealth technology to bypass New Haven's sensor grid completely. The holographic display showed the alien ships in perfect detail. Their organic design made them look more like massive insects than spacecraft. The hull plating seemed to shift and ripple as if it were alive. What do we know about this species? Jisoo asked. Lieutenant Song Min-jae, the ship's intelligence officer, stepped forward with a data pad. Very little, Admiral. They're not in any of our first contact databases, no previous encounters on record, but based on their broadcast and the surgical precision of their attack, they appear to be highly intelligent and extremely organized. Jisoo studied the tactical information flowing across the screens around her. Ship movements, energy signatures, communication patterns. The Vextai had planned this operation with military precision. They had studied human defensive capabilities and found a way to neutralize them completely. "Admiral," Jiho said quietly, "there's something else. The children aren't just hostages. Intelligence analysis suggests the Vextai use other species' young for something called brood cultivation. They're not planning to negotiate. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every officer present felt the shift in their admiral's presence. Jisoo had led them through 3 major conflicts, always maintaining her professional composure. But now her hands were trembling, and it wasn't from fear. "They made a mistake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They think we're like the other species they've encountered. They think we'll calculate odds and make the logical choice." She turned to face her bridge crew. Every man and woman present had families somewhere in human space. Every one of them understood exactly what was at stake. "The Vextai have studied our military tactics, our technology, our previous surrenders and negotiations. But they missed the most important thing about humanity. They don't understand what happens when you threaten our children." Jisoo moved to the central command console and entered her personal authorization codes. Deep within the retributions, computer core systems that had been dormant for years began coming online. Emergency protocols that existed only in classified databases started executing across the human fleet. "Computer, activate Protocol Guardian. Authorization Admiral Park. Jisoo Alpha 77 Delta. Protocol Guardian activated." The ship's AI responded. "All Special Forces units are being recalled. Estimated time to full deployment, 18 hours. Around the bridge, communication officers began receiving responses from across human space. Ships changed course mid-mission. Elite soldiers cut short leave rotations and reported for immediate duty. Supply depots began loading ammunition and medical supplies onto emergency transports. "Ma'am," reported Communications Officer Lee Sunwoo, "we're getting acknowledgements from 12 different star systems. Every available Special Forces unit is responding to the recall." But Jisoo needed more than just soldiers. She needed someone who understood exactly what was at stake. Someone who would fight not just for victory, but for vengeance. "Get me Colonel Yoon Seonghwa," she ordered. "Priority 1 communication." The holographic communicator flickered to life, showing the scarred face of humanity's most decorated Special Forces commander. Colonel Yoon had led more deep space rescue operations than any other officer in the fleet. His reputation for bringing people home alive was legendary. But when his image appeared, Jisoo saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before, the same cold fury that was building in her own chest. "Admiral," Yoon said before she could speak, "my daughter Minji was visiting her cousins on New Haven for the school holidays." The words hung in the space between them like a death sentence. Jisoo realized that the Vextai hadn't just taken random human children, they had unknowingly declared war on some of the most dangerous people in the galaxy. "Then you understand. What needs to be done, Colonel? This isn't just a rescue mission anymore. This is a message to every species in the galaxy about what happens when you touch human children." Yoon's scarred features hardened into something that would have terrified the Vextai if they could have seen it. "How many ships do I get?" "All of them," Jisoo replied. "Every vessel, every soldier, every weapon in the human arsenal. The Vextai wanted to see how humans respond to threats against our young. They're about to get a demonstration that will echo across the stars for 1,000 years." The Retribution's engines began charging for maximum acceleration. Across human space, the greatest military force ever assembled by their species was mobilizing. The Vextai had awakened something primal and terrible. They had triggered the one response that no alien species had ever survived intact. They had threatened human children. And now they were about to discover why humanity had clawed its way to the top of their homeworld's food chain, and why they had never stopped being predators. The asteroid field around Kepler-7 looked like a graveyard of dead worlds. Massive chunks of rock and metal drifted in the endless darkness, their surfaces scarred by millions of years of cosmic bombardment. Among these silent giants, the stealth ship Silent Fury moved like a hunting wolf, its advanced hull coating absorbing every photon of light that touched it. Colonel Yun Seonghwa floated in the ship's cramped briefing compartment, studying holographic displays of the Vextai hive ship. The alien vessel hung in the center of the asteroid field like a massive organic cathedral, its chitinous hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that suggested it was more creature than machine. 37 hours since the abduction, reported Sergeant Kim Dong-hyun, checking his chronometer. The children are still alive. Long-range sensors detect human life signs in the lower decks. Yoon's jaw tightened. His 15-year-old daughter Minji was somewhere inside that nightmare, along with 42 other innocent souls. The thought of her frightened and alone made something dark and violent stir in his chest. "Sir," whispered Private Choi Yeonjun. "From the sensor station, we're picking up increased activity around the hive ship. Looks like they're preparing for something." The tactical display showed smaller Vextai craft moving between the main vessel and several asteroid mining platforms. The aliens had been busy during their time in the Kepler system, setting up what appeared to be a temporary base of operations. "They're not just passing through," observed Lieutenant Park Woo-young, the team's demolitions expert. "They're planning to stay here for a while." Inside the hive ship, the captured children huddled together in what had once been cargo holds, now converted into makeshift prison cells. The walls were covered in a strange organic membrane that pulsed with its own heartbeat. The air tasted of copper and decay, and strange clicking sounds echoed through the corridors at all hours. 10-year-old Lee Hyun-woo had become their unofficial leader, not because he was the oldest, but because he refused to give up hope. While other children wept for their parents, Hyun-woo organized them into small groups, making sure everyone had someone to hold on to during the dark periods when the ship's bioluminescent lighting dimmed to almost nothing. "Remember what we practiced," he whispered to the group of younger children clustered around him. "When the bug things come to check on us, we stay quiet and still. They get angry when we make noise." 6-year-old Park Soo-young clutched a small stuffed animal, her eyes wide with fear. "I want my mommy," she whispered. Hyun-woo took her small hand in his. "I know. My dad always told me that humans are strongest when we protect each other. He said that's how our ancestors survived on Earth, by taking care of their families. No matter what, we're going to take care of each other until help comes." The Vextai guards found these displays of human solidarity amusing. Their compound eyes would glitter with what might have been laughter as they watched the small creatures comforting each other. To beings who consumed their own weak without hesitation, such behavior seemed like a fascinating evolutionary mistake. But they had never encountered a species quite like humanity before. They didn't understand that human children grew up on stories of heroes who never surrendered, of ordinary people who did extraordinary things when their loved ones were threatened. Even the youngest among them carried genetic memories of ancestors who had faced down saber-toothed cats and ice ages with nothing but sharp sticks and stubborn determination. In the deepest part of the hive ship, Hive Master Thek prepared the feeding chambers with the care of an artist. The biological machinery that would process the human young into nourishment for Vextai larvae required precise calibration. The terror and pain of the subjects was essential to the chemical composition of the final product. Thek's mandibles clicked with anticipation as he reviewed the specifications for each human child. The younger ones would be processed first, their undeveloped nervous systems producing the sweetest biochemical compounds. The older children would be saved for later, their more complex fear responses creating delicacies that Vextai nobility would pay fortunes to consume. The Hive Master had conducted such operations on 17 different worlds, processing the young of dozens of species. None had ever escaped, none had ever been rescued. The pattern was always the same: initial resistance, desperate negotiation attempts, final submission when the parents realized their military forces were no match for Vextai technology. But Thek had never encountered humans before. He had studied their military records, analyzed their previous conflicts, calculated their probable responses. Everything in his databases suggested they would follow the same pattern as every other species. They would attempt negotiation, offer material wealth, perhaps even surrender their entire civilization to save their offspring. What Thek hadn't calculated was the effect of threatening human children on the psychology of human parents. He didn't understand that across the galaxy, ordinary men and women were transforming into something far more dangerous than any military force. Shopkeepers were picking up weapons. Scientists were designing new instruments of war. Peaceful. Colonists were volunteering for suicide missions. Back aboard the Silent Fury, Colonel Yoon received an encrypted communication from Admiral Park Jisoo. The message was brief, but contained everything he needed to know. All human forces are now mobilized. You have whatever resources you need. Bring our children home, Colonel. Make sure the galaxy remembers what happens when you touch a human child. Yoon looked around at his team, 12 of the most dangerous soldiers humanity had ever produced. Each one had volunteered for this mission, knowing they probably wouldn't survive it. Each one had left behind their own families to rescue children they had never met. Listen up, he said quietly. We all know what we signed up for. The Vextai think they're dealing with just another weak species. They're about to learn that human beings don't negotiate when it comes to our young. We don't calculate odds. We don't make tactical retreats. He paused, looking each soldier in the eye. We become something that makes monsters wake up screaming. Today, we show the galaxy why you never, ever threaten human children. The Silent Fury began its final approach toward the hive ship, its crew transformed from soldiers into something primal and unstoppable. Behind them, the largest human fleet ever assembled was jumping into the system, bringing with them the full fury of a species whose protective instincts had been awakened. The hunt was about to begin, and the Vextai were about to discover that they had made the worst mistake in their species' history. The Silent Fury clung to the underside of a massive asteroid like a metal parasite, its hull perfectly camouflaged against the rocky surface. Colonel Yoon Seonghwa watched the chronometer tick toward 0300 ship time, his heart beating steady and slow. Around him, 12 of humanity's finest warriors made their final preparations in complete silence. The Vextai hive ship loomed before them like a living nightmare, its organic hull pulsing with alien rhythms. Bioluminescent veins ran across its surface like infected blood vessels, casting eerie patterns of light across the asteroid field. The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of a human battlecruiser, but it had one fatal weakness that its builders had never considered. It had been designed to intimidate prey species into submission. It had never been built to withstand an assault by creatures who refused to submit. Remember, Yoon whispered into his comm unit, we're not here to fight a war. We're here to bring our children home. Every second counts. Private Nam Woojin checked his plasma cutter one final time. At 19, he was the youngest member of the team, barely older than some of the children they were here to rescue. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from barely controlled rage. His little sister would have been the same age as some of those kids. Thermal charges are set, reported Sergeant Kim Dong-hyun. Hull breach in 30 seconds. The specialized explosives had been designed to cut through alien armor without causing explosive decompression. They needed to get inside the ship without alerting every Vextai warrior aboard. Stealth was their only advantage. The charges detonated with surgical precision, carving a hole through the hive ship's hull that sealed itself immediately with emergency biomembranes. Yoon's team slipped through the breach like shadows, their advanced armor adjusting its color to match the alien corridors. Inside, the ship was even more disturbing than the exterior suggested. The walls weren't just covered in organic material, they were organic material. Veins and arteries ran through the ceiling, pumping some kind of luminescent fluid that served as the ship's lighting system. The air was thick and humid, carrying the smell of decay and something sweetly nauseating that made human stomachs turn. "Bioship," whispered Lieutenant Park Woo-young. "The whole thing is alive." The implications were terrifying. If the ship could heal itself, their explosives might not be effective. If it could think, it might already know they were here. But none of that mattered. Somewhere in this nightmare, 43 human children were waiting for rescue. Yoon's team split into 3 groups, moving through the ship's organic corridors with deadly efficiency. Their armor's sensors mapped the layout as they advanced, building a three-dimensional picture of the alien vessel's interior. What they found defied every principle of ship design they knew. The hive ship wasn't built like a human vessel, with logical deck plans and standardized compartments. Instead, it resembled a massive insect hive, with chambers and tunnels that served purposes human minds could barely comprehend. Some areas pulsed with the rhythm of alien hearts. Others were filled with a green mist that their suit sensors identified as highly toxic. Private Nam Woo-jin found the holding cells first, guided by the faint heat signatures of human bodies on his thermal scanner. The children were kept in what appeared to be cocoon-like chambers, surrounded by organic walls that wept a clear, sticky fluid. His heart nearly stopped when he saw them. 43 children ages 4 to 15 huddled together in groups. Their clothes were torn and stained, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. But their eyes still held that unmistakable spark of human defiance. Even here, in this alien hell, they had not given up hope. 10-year-old Lee Hyun-woo was the first to spot Woo-jin's armored figure. Despite everything he had endured, the boy's voice was steady when he spoke. "Are you here to take us home?" Woo-jin felt his throat tighten. Through his helmet's external speakers, he tried to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "Yes, but we need you to be brave just a little longer, okay? Can you do that for me?" Little Kim Yoonji, barely 6 years old, nodded solemnly. "We've been brave for 3 days. We can be brave a little more." The children had organized themselves into small groups, with the older ones protecting the younger ones. Even in captivity, even facing unimaginable horror, they had maintained their humanity. It was the most beautiful and heartbreaking thing Woo-jin had ever seen. But their rescue was interrupted by the sound of approaching Vextai warriors. The ship's bioneural network had finally detected the human intruders, and now the aliens were converging on their position like antibodies attacking an infection. The first Vextai soldier to reach the holding area died before it could raise an alarm. Woo-jin's plasma rifle carved through its chitinous armor like it was made of paper. The alien fell backward, its compound eyes still registering surprise as its body hit the organic floor. More Vextai poured into the chamber, their razor-sharp claws extended and mandibles clicking with fury. But they had never faced anything like human soldiers fighting to protect children. Each member of Yoon's team moved with lethal precision, their weapons cutting through alien armor and flesh with mechanical efficiency. Sergeant Kim Dong-yun covered the retreat route while Private Choi Yeonjun helped organize the children. The younger ones clung to the older ones, forming a protective huddle that moved as one unit. Even in their terror, they followed instructions perfectly, understanding instinctively that their survival depended on working together. The battle intensified. As more Vextai warriors arrived, these aliens were larger than the guards, their exoskeletons thicker, and their weapons more advanced. Energy blasts scorched the organic walls, filling the air with the smell of burning biomatter. But the human soldiers fought with something the Vextai had never encountered before. They weren't fighting for territory or resources or political ideology. They were fighting for the future of their species, represented by the frightened children behind them. In the main corridor, Hive Master Thek finally confronted the human intruders personally. The massive alien stood nearly 9 feet tall, his chitinous armor scarred by centuries of combat. His compound eyes fixed on Colonel Yoon with predatory focus. "Your kind disgusts me," Thek hissed, his mandibles clicking with contempt. "You would throw away your lives for mere offspring. Such weakness deserves extinction." Yoon looked up at the towering alien, his plasma rifle steady in his hands. Behind him he could hear the voices of human children being led to safety by his team. The sound filled him with a calm, cold fury that made his next words ring with absolute certainty. "That's exactly why you'll never win. You see weakness where we see strength. You see expendable resources where we see irreplaceable treasures. You made one mistake, Thek. You threatened human children. The plasma rifles." Charging sequence hummed to life, its energy core building to maximum output. The sound was the last thing Hive Master Thek ever heard. The rescue was far from over, but the message had been sent. Humanity had arrived, and they had brought with them something the galaxy had never seen before. Parents with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The command center aboard, the battlecruiser Retribution, buzzed with controlled chaos as reports streamed in from across the Kepler system. Admiral Park Jisoo stood at the central holographic display, watching tactical updates flow across the screens like digital waterfalls. Her hands were steady now, the trembling fury of the past 4 days replaced by cold satisfaction. "Admiral," Captain Han Jiho approached with a data pad, his voice carrying the exhaustion of 4 sleepless nights. "Final casualty reports are, in all 43 children recovered, all alive. Medical teams report minor injuries only, mostly from the rescue operation itself." Jisoo closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders that had been crushing her since the first distress call. Around the command center, hardened military officers wiped tears from their eyes without shame. They had won more than just a battle today. "And the Vextai vessel?" she asked. "Complete structural failure." Colonel Yoon's team planted charges. "Throughout the ship's bio-neural network before extraction, the entire vessel is dead in space. Life support offline. Long-range sensors detect no survivors." The massive hive ship hung in the asteroid field like a monument to alien arrogance, its once pulsing hull now dark and lifeless. Where bioluminescent veins had once carried the ship's lifeblood, only empty channels remained. The organic cathedral that had struck terror into human hearts now looked like nothing more than a rotting carcass. But Jisoo knew that destroying one alien ship, no matter how symbolically satisfying, wasn't enough. Word of the Vextai attack had spread throughout the galaxy, faster than light itself, carried by the quantum communication networks that connected every civilized world. Other species were watching, calculating, wondering if humanity was as weak as the Vextai had believed. "Communications," she called to Lieutenant Song Min-jae. "Are we ready for the broadcast?" "Yes, ma'am. Every human ship, station, and colony is standing by. We have relays positioned to reach every known alien communication network in this sector of the galaxy." Jisoo walked to the center of the command deck, positioning herself in front of the primary recording array. Behind her, the tactical display showed the rescued children being transferred to medical bays aboard human vessels, their small forms wrapped in emergency blankets but their spirits unbroken. "Begin recording," she ordered. The cameras activated, capturing not just her image but the entire scope of the human response. Dozens of warships filled the space around the dead hive ship, their weapons still powered and ready for battle. Fighter squadrons patrolled the perimeter, while rescue shuttles ferried the children to safety. "To every species in the galaxy that might be listening," Jisoo began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just orchestrated the largest military operation in human history. 4 days ago, an alien race called the Vextai made a grave miscalculation. They believed they could intimidate humanity by threatening our children. The display shifted to show footage from the rescue operation, Colonel Yoon's team moving through the alien corridors with deadly precision, Vextai warriors falling before the focused fury of human soldiers. The moment when the first child was carried to safety in human arms. They studied our military capabilities, our technological limitations, our previous diplomatic responses. But they failed to understand the most important fact about our species. We are not just humans when our children are threatened. We become something else entirely. The recording showed the children themselves, frightened but defiant, helping each other through their ordeal. 10-year-old Lee Hyunwoo organizing the younger ones into protective groups. 6-year-old Park Soo-young clutching her stuffed animal but never giving up hope. Even in the face of unimaginable terror, they had maintained their humanity. "These are our children," Jisoo continued. "They carry within them everything we were, everything we are, and everything we hope to become. They are not just biological offspring to us. They are the future of our species, the continuation of our dreams, the living proof that love is stronger than fear." Back on New Haven, the reunion scenes played out like something from humanity's greatest stories. Commander Lee Min-ho knelt in the landing bay of the rescue shuttle, his arms wrapped around his daughter Nari. The 8-year-old looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much but remained filled with trust. "Daddy, "Are the monsters gone?" she asked, her small voice, carrying across the landing bay. Minho held her tighter, knowing that his response would be heard across the galaxy. "Yes, sweetheart, and they won't be coming back. No one will ever hurt you again." Similar scenes repeated throughout the human fleet. Parents who had aged years in 4 days suddenly looked young again as they held their children. Siblings reunited with tears of joy. Grandparents who had feared they would never see their grandchildren again whispered promises of safety and love. The broadcast captured it all, transmitting these intimate moments of human connection to every corner of known space. But the message wasn't just about love and family bonds. It was about the terrible price of threatening what humans held most dear. "Let this serve as a warning to any species that might consider humanity an easy target," Jisoo said, her voice hardening like cooling steel. "We can be negotiated with. We prefer peace to war, trade to conquest, cooperation to conflict. But threaten our children, and you will face something that your military analysts cannot quantify, or your strategic computers cannot calculate." The display showed the final moments of the Vextai hive ship as its bio-neural network collapsed, the massive vessel dying like a wounded animal. The aliens who had terrorized dozens of worlds, who had consumed the young of countless species, had been reduced to cosmic debris in less than 6 hours. You will face human parents with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And that is a force that has never been defeated, not in the million years since our species first learned to protect its young on the plains of Earth. Across the galaxy, alien monitoring stations recorded every second of the broadcast. In the HFY council chambers of the Galactic Trade Federation, representatives from 73 different species watched in silence as humanity's message played out on their screens. Some species nodded in understanding, recognizing the primal fury they had just witnessed. Others calculated new defensive positions, suddenly aware that they had misjudged the humans entirely. The Krill Empire, known for their aggressive expansion, politics, quietly cancelled their planned invasion of human border worlds. The Zephyrian Collective, who had been considering humanity for potential enslavement, deleted all files related to the human sectors from their strategic databases. Throughout the galaxy, species that had never given humans a second thought suddenly began treating them with careful respect. But perhaps the most important audience was the children themselves. As they recovered aboard human medical ships, surrounded by the love and protection of their families, they began to understand something profound about their species. They had survived because they were human, because they belonged to a race that would move stars to keep them safe. Young Kim Tae-young, Admiral Jisoo's nephew, sat in the medical bay with his aunt beside him. "Auntie," he said quietly, "why did they take us?" Jisoo smoothed his hair gently. "Because they thought we were weak. They thought threatening you would make us surrender. But we didn't surrender. No, sweetheart. We never surrender when it comes to family. That's what makes us human." The broadcast concluded with a simple statement that would be remembered for generations. Humanity's children are not negotiating chips or military targets. They are our future, our hope, and our greatest strength. Any species that threatens them threatens the continuation of human civilization itself, and that is something we will never allow. The message spread through quantum communication networks faster than the speed of light, reaching the farthest corners of explored space within hours. Alien databases were quietly updated with new information about human psychology and military capabilities. Trade negotiations were adjusted to account for humanity's newfound reputation. Border conflicts that had been simmering for years were suddenly resolved through diplomatic channels. The galaxy had learned its lesson. In the vast catalogue of cosmic mistakes that civilizations could make, threatening human children had just been classified as potentially species-ending. The Vextai had paid the ultimate price for their ignorance, and their fate would serve as a warning for millennia to come. Humanity's children would sleep safely among the stars, protected not just by their parents' love, but by the knowledge that the entire galaxy now understood what happened to those who dared to threaten them. The end.